now we have the presentation from FilmLight with Daniele.
Thank you. Do you want to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to say something? Yeah. Okay. I first give the microphone to my colleague Daphne. She wants to say a few words.
Hi. I just wanted to say one thing. I don't know if you've heard about it, but we've launched FilmLight Color Awards in partnership with Camera Image. So it's basically an award celebrating colorists. We're launching it this year. It's the 3rd edition. So if you haven't heard about it, the whole point is to celebrate colorists, but also to emphasize the collaboration between DOPs and colorists. So we have lots of DOPs in the jury panel. Last year we had Bruno Delbonnel, Ben Davis, Harry Wegner. So what I wanted to say is that if you have any project that you've done this year, please push your colorist to submit. It's a very nice award, and I think colorists should be a bit more in the light rather than in the grading suite in the dark.
Okay, thanks, thanks Daphne for the words until I get my PowerPoint, my system up. Okay, so in this talk, and I try to make it not an hour, so we get because we are all hungry. At least I am. But yeah. Today I want to talk about look development and a novel approach to look development. And this is kind of a world premiere because it's the first time that I'm actually talking about a new tool which we are going to release. It's going into beta very soon, so it's quite possible that when you do your next movie, you could ask your colorist to develop a new look with this type of approach. And in this talk, I'm not want to just show you the tool, but explain the process we went through, how we arrived there, because I think there's a lot of learned lesson we learned. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, we need to, I guess, understand, at least this was for us a learning process, that there is not such a thing as no look. So you cannot actually shoot something and not impose a look on it. If you're not managing the look, you just get a random look, right? The random look which is by the camera manufacturer or from the workflow you're using. But you always, when you produce an image, it always has a look. It never actually reflects reality. So even, that's a very philosophical question, especially if you're shooting documentary, where you say, like, I don't want to change the colors because I want to reflect reality. That is actually not possible. If we look in, for example, evidence-based in courtrooms, there's a big discussion about this as well. That's why I pull up a slide from a different industry, because when it comes about video proofs and evidence, there's a big debate that you cannot actually really mimic the perception someone had in a scene by just showing a photograph of that scene and displaying that photograph to a jury. That is, it's not producing the same perception. So that's a big thing. So seeing is deceiving, actually. So perception, when you look at an image, it's not determined by the physical characteristics. It's not about saying, like, okay, I measured this spectrum here and this XYZ value, and if I replicate this on an image, I will get the same perception of the scene, because an image has a lack of many things. So the perception is determined not by physical characteristics, but by the intention and goals of the observer. There are studies about this from Land and others. This is a well-studied subject. Seeing is a function of knowledge, expectation, goals, and concurrent tasks. What am I doing while I perceive? So it's impossible to simulate what we see in the scene in the courtroom's jury's mind. I'm quoting here people from that field here. Pictures are bound to misrepresent what a viewer would perceive. And this is the conundrum which we as you as cinematographers are in. So actually a photography is always, and I think will always be, an abstraction from reality. And in fact, if you go into the technology field, there are two phases to schools. The one, typically the display manufacturers, they say like immersion through reality. We make the image sharper, better, represent the reality more. But I think this is ill-posed, that argument, because we cannot reproduce reality. And I don't think we need to reproduce reality, because you and your work, you show very good that immersion comes through abstraction. So the more we abstract from reality, the more we can immerse the audience into the story. The best stories are told on a campfire where there's no picture and everything happens in the audience mind. And the same is true with photography. And you notice, and this is basically why I'm standing here and telling you this, because it's basically your work, is basically the visual development. And it starts way before where I come into play with making tools for colorists. It's the costume, the makeup, the props, location, lighting, optical filters, lens, how you move the camera, the perspective, full frame, all of that, the acquisition mediums, the formats. But then it doesn't stop there. It goes through the motion picture development pipeline. This was the photon path I was showing you, the whole process of that. That belongs, at least in our vision at FilmLight, to this visual development process. And that's why also I think we chosen this stage to introduce this new look, because it is supervised by the director of photography and it's executed by the colorist, but the overall vision is the vision of the director of photography, and in collaboration, of course, with the director. So that's why I think that this is the right platform to talk about this in a more deep level. So, oh, we don't see this slide. Can we make it's a little bit darker over? So yeah, because there's a line. I used a very faint. I could actually grade it up because I'm. Yeah, at some later when we look at images, we can also turn them on, but I think a gamma slam would not hurt here. Yeah. Okay, so it's good that my PowerPoint can do a color grading. So, okay, so I think that is a very abstract graph of what happened in the past. And we haven't planned making of the light, so I'm really confusing now. So thanks for being super. Thank you. Yeah. So what happened is we had the way the video works and the system. I don't want to get too technical, but in the past when you were using a video camera and the way you produce the images, it would lead to a video look. This was big debate in the dogma scene and all of that, but we went through that. Then there was the film look. Film has inherently a look. We will just look at this in detail just in a few seconds. And then when the first digital cameras came into place, the first Sony cameras, all of them, we had this digital look because we treated them differently. They work differently, we developed them differently. And then basically we got into this, I would say, down here in terms of the aesthetics of the looks, and we were not really happy. And we could improve and make a digital camera look kind of, or digital pipeline kind of okay. But suddenly we at some points we said like, okay, but if we move left or right, we're just getting worse. So this is maybe the best we can get on a digital camera. And then what's happened right during the digital intermediate phases, we would go back to the film look, even when we shot digital. And that means we were trying to emulate film with digital cameras. Now I need to take the gamma slam off. Yeah. How would we do this? How would we take the digital, the film look and apply to digital cameras? Well, from the DI times, we would characterize print film, and that it has embodied the most of the film look. And for this, we created print film emulation profiles, which then turned into print film emulation lookup tables. And nowadays, everyone has a secret print LUT in his pocket, which he wants to use for his next grading because it makes the image look good, in the term of the aesthetics. So the process, it brings the print film look into a digital pipeline. That's great, but then the cons are it severely limits what you can do with that grade in terms of dynamic range, limits the workflow, has precision limitations. And also what I find is the biggest concern is we gain no deeper understanding of the look process. Why do we actually like what film did? Then, and I'm guilty here, well, it's guilty, but this is a natural process. What we then did is like to overcome most of the cons, we took film print emulation and we stretched them, we interpolated them with very clever mathematical interpolation algorithms, and we created scene looks. This is how it's called in Baselight, but there are different libraries, look libraries, and so on from different places. And they try to overcome some of the concerns, overcomes the dynamic range issues, overcomes the workflow issues. It's still a lookup table based, and what still my biggest concern was at the time, we have no profound understanding of the look process. So we are kind of trapped in that thing. And if you look at the last 15 years, oh, this is not really, but anyway, but if you look around on all of the streaming platforms and all of the movies, the film look is all present. So every movie looks very similar in terms of the quality of skin tone renditions, all of that. And I'm not saying that it looks bad. It looks actually quite nice. But we were thinking, how can we, or are we maybe, again, are we maybe with the film look in a local maximum? And if we look even further, maybe we can reach another level, which gives us more creative freedom and which gives us additional opportunities in the look development process. And this is what lead us to the definition of a new type of framework. What do we? And how do we arrive at this framework? We need to ask ourselves, what do we actually like about film? Don't treat this as a black box and say like, okay, I like it. What aspects do you like it and why? And maybe we can formulate a framework. And within that framework, once we have that framework, maybe we can make other looks which are not necessarily film, but still on the opposite of the digital and the video look, or the unity mapping where if you're not doing anything with the colors, you think you have a natural look, but you have a actually very, maybe unnatural look. Only if we know what we want, we can build that framework. And this is what I did the last 5 years into collaboration with colorists and cinematographers. Treat film looks as one example of a broader category of looks. And for this, we need to gain a deeper understanding of perception and preference. Okay, so first thing is there are trends and cultural differences. So some groups prefer different types of renderings, for example, for skin tones. But what we can see is that film exceptionally renders different skin tones exceptionally good. How does it do it, or why does it? Why do we like this? This is something we looked at. Or why do we like prototypic effects more? So why do, if we look at film rendering, it has always a stylization aspect. And in fact, we can find the same principles in general studies of visual preference and visual perception. We like if things get reduced to prototypes and thereby reduce the otherwise overwhelming variation in the appearance of a stimulus. So typically that is more preferred than a random collection. And we believe the same is true for the color palette. If the color palette is reduced to lead the story, that is just a general preference. So we can look around in different preference studies and draw parallels here. Another, again, back to the skin tones, and there are studies about which type of skin tones we prefer, and there is evidence that a more healthy skin tone, whatever that means, is preferred over basically more scattered skin tones. And just because we are evolutionarily triggered to prefer skin tones which are more even, because that indicates maybe a healthier mate choice here, in a very abstract sense. So I've tried to do this, and I'm not sure if this travels here, but what I've tried to do is I've tried to simulate this with a more cinematic approach. So we have this image here, and we would say, and this is not using any type of look. I'm not sure if you can dim the room lights. Yeah, okay, that's already better. Wow, thank you. Thanks for the help here, and we haven't practiced this morning. So now what I'm doing is I'm really not nice to that person, because what I do, I'm not sure if you see this, under the eyes, I make the eyes a little bit more green. Can you see this? And the nose, I make the nose a little bit more red. So as she would have many red wines like we did yesterday night. And you can immediately see that this is not as preferred as this. She just, we naturally picked this up. I'm not saying for every situation, but in general. So now what we're doing is we take this image where we have altered her in a very unpleasing way, and I will apply a film look onto the image. Now, so now this looks more like a film rendering, because what I've done is I've taken this image and applied this rendering. And what you can see is that a film rendition dramatically reduces the variation in the magenta green axis within skin tones, and that has the effect that it compresses those variations and make that image basically those variations disappear. It's basically like a digital, like a makeup in the reproduction phase, and this is something we really like. And this would be now the one without the green eyes. And you can still see when I flick between the two, it's still affecting the image. I'm doing this underneath, but not as much as without any film look. So this is, I think, a very important aspect and one of the key ingredients to produce nice skin tones. Also what we found is that the way luminance, hue, and color purity behaves on film is also very tied to nature. And I made a talk at Camera Image a few years ago only about this topic. So we could even zoom in only about this topic and spend another 2 hours here, or you just make a photo and watch this online if you're interested in this topic more. Basically, there's an effect called brilliance. That means that if you have a saturated color and it's too bright for its surrounding, it will be perceived as a fluorescent color or a light-emitting color. So all of those yellow chips have exactly the same RGB value, exactly the same luminance. The stimulus reaching your eye is the same, you could say. But here I'm establishing a brighter diffuse white based on the lighting here than here. And then, of course, in the shade, the ball is casting a shade. That means a yellow chip would need to be darker. But if I keep it the same way, then it doesn't look any more like an object color. It looks like an object which emits light. And very too easy, we can change the colors in digital grading to produce those colors. But even digital cameras, due to their slight variations to the human observer, can produce colors which are too bright for the saturation. So this is without any color grading, just from the camera, rendered to Rec 709. And now when I limit the colors to the colors which are physically possible, actually, then you can see, especially on the reds to the left, but also on the green bottle here, you can see that these reds are a little bit too hot, right? Too bright for their saturation. And managing that comes for free with film. Film would not be able to reproduce those bright reds because it produces the reds by filtering out white light. It's basically subtractive, whereas with a digital pipeline, we are additive. I can also show this here in an example if I have to hear the image and I just crank up saturation. And if you look at Chappie's arm here, I'm not sure if you can see this as well, it starts to look unnatural. Also the skin here starts to almost emit a little bit of light. And if we apply a film look, all of that is muted down again. So we not accidentally producing colors which are too bright for the saturation. One very obvious thing is the S-curve, which you can find everywhere in film for the highlight, for the gamut, for all sorts of characteristics of film, either negative or print film, has some sort of sigmoid-shaped curve. That's also quite obvious. And if you render an image with that, the highlight roll-off and that is much more preferred than if we have a hard clip here. So if we compare film versus digital, we can see film on the one side is stochastic, digital is deterministic. Film has exceptional skin tone renditions. Digital has this kind of uncanny skin tones. If you don't treat the skin tone somehow, then it's always looks uncanny. Film has subtractive color mixing. Digital has additive color mixing. Film has domain crosstalk. I haven't made a slide for that. That means you cannot actually only expose only one of the layers. There's always crosstalk between them. That means you cannot just say like, oh, the green channel, I want to move this up and down. In a digital image, it's very easy to only change one domain, either the green, red, blue, or any other domain, because they are clearly separated. On film, there's nothing is clearly separated. Halation, for example, is another example which is a domain crosstalk, where you say like, okay, you're shooting film in one position, but then due to internal reflections, it has consequences in the neighboring pixels. This is something we seem to like. Now you could ask yourself questions, are all of those features engineered by film manufacturers? Did they actually put this S-curve into the film process? No, they were lucky. Of course, film was engineered over almost a century for preferred color reproduction. It's a different topic. But a lot of that comes naturally. Because if you take the example of the S-curve, that's inherent in many systems, in film, but also in CRTs. We had this, it's gone with the digital displays. Tape saturation, still used in audio productions. Valve saturation, if you ask a guitarist, he would say, I play on a Valve amp because it has the film look. He would not say film look, but it's actually the same discussion. But also economic systems, or even we learned when we looked at pandemic in the last years, we saw S-curves and Gaussian curves appearing out of nowhere. So the learned lesson we found is that it's not actually the distinguish between film and digital. We can, if we draw it a little bit, if we step up, and we can actually find that there are natural systems and artificial systems. And natural systems have certain attributes which we like, and artificial have certain attributes which we maybe not like. I need to change one thing. So what we should do is we should move the discussion away from film to digital, but have it to talk about natural and artificial. And what you're seeing here is the whole film gamut versus a digital projector gamut. And I don't think I need to tell you which one is which. The ones who is sticking out in this very unnatural shape that is a digital projection, and the one which is almost looks like a potato, that's basically the film gamut. And I think you just from the intuition you can see that if we compare this, without having any scientific knowledge about this, I think this tells us that there's something about those natural versus those artificial systems. Here we see a comparison between an HDR projection versus film. So now the big artificial looking diamond shaped thing is a Rec 2020 HDR projector, and then and inside that is the film projector. So we can nowadays produce many more colors, but how the system behaves is actually the important part. Okay, so we get almost the same kind of distinction between, like we had with film with digital, if we look at natural images, natural systems versus artificial systems. Natural systems typically are also stochastic. They are complex in comparison to the simple artificial, even if the photon path looks complicated to us, in comparison to nature, that is very simple. And complex systems by themselves, they produce emergent behavior, a behavior that every individual part does not have, but the group in this complex interaction has it. Those S-curves, that's basically, it's called hysteresis, which is in every electromagnetic field, but also in many other fields is present everywhere, or percolation. It's another aspect. In digital systems, we have a hard clip, which is typically the limit of our number container we are using. So how can we bring a natural behavior we thought into a digital system? Because we have a digital system, because we're not arguing that we should do our color grading somewhere else than in a digital system, but what can we add to the system so that it behaves naturally? We believe you should choose and stick, very importantly, stick to a leitmotif. Find something you want to use as guidance. Then introduce intra and inter-domain crosstalk. Of course, in digital, we get used to, okay, can you change that little green pixel over there in here? But this is not an actual natural behavior. And by introducing domain crosstalk, we produce a system which finally reacts natural anymore. We need to limit ourselves to physically plausible functions. Nowadays in digital images, we can do whatever we like. We can come up with any type of expression or function or algorithm, and we can add it to an image. But only a very, very small subset of those functions produce natural behavior. So for the tool, which I'm just in a moment going to show you, which is called ChromoGen, we stick to the leitmotif which we already stick with other grading tools we have in Baselight, which is a human visual system. We're not saying that we are mimicking exactly a human visual system. That would be crazy to say because it's so complex, but we use it as a leitmotif. And our primary grading tool, BaseGrade, is operating in the cone space in LMS, which that's why it's called BaseGrade, because it's the first process in this human visual system, and you can, with BaseGrade, basically adjust the input to the signal, the cone excitation. But when the signal is going processed in the visual system, it's decomposed into different feature spaces in different representations, and we choose a so-called opponent representation for the ChromoGen plugin. So it's not working in RGB or in LMS, but it's working in one of those a newly developed opponent space. It's easy to say, like, oh, we choose this color space, but I want to give you really the fundamental motivation behind it. And if you look further, I'm not sure, probably not, I didn't want to bring up the topic of artificial intelligence and machine learning. But if we look in how machine learning works and deep neural networks, they are operating typically in this type of domain. And if we look in our visual cortex, we find similar things here. So I think this is a natural evolution, replicating a natural system, which is the human visual system. So in a very abstract way, what we found is a collection which is natural system design versus artificial system design. And in there, we designed a system which can emulate some of the film looks quite good. Not all of them, that's why the overlap is not 100%. Yeah, we are realistic. But, and also we're saying, like, this is not exactly like human perception, because it would be, human perception is much more complex. But it has a big overlap here. But the most important thing is it's in that gray circle and not over there, we hope. And we're testing this with a few selected colorists already for a few years, and it's looking really promising. Okay, so I don't need to do like this because I need two hands. I try to make this a little bit smaller here. So what we see here is an image, and the image is not rendered with any kind of look. It's taken from the input camera material and going through a typical workflow. Could be an ACES workflow, could be another workflow. In this case, it's a workflow which is the default one that we have developed. The talk is not about the color management workflows. We have done those talks as well. But what we have here is now a tool which allows you to stack atomic look operators together to produce a certain look. So if we apply this, if I go down here, we can see that this is changing the skin tones and it's changing the color palette in a way which I hope you agree looks preferred, more preferred than the other one. And this is basically the net result. So we can see we are working in this opponency color space. That means we have one dimension is kind of the exposure of the image, and then if we look from the top, we get this the whole color basically aligned in a, again, very natural way. We have the blues opposites to the yellows and the greens opposite to the red, magenta-ish colors. That's very typical for such an color space. And then we are operating exclusively in this color space. And the good thing is every aspect of that look is an operator which you can see and you can basically modify, and you can examine what it is doing and how it's doing that, and yeah, and you can achieve different looks. This is the one I showed you was kind of a homage. It's not an exact copy, but it's a homage to the Vision look. That's basically both a Vision negative and a Vision print. This is a homage to a Fuji color rendering. This is a two-strip process, and you can see that you don't have anything else than those complementary cyan, orange colors here. But we can also produce looks which do not have any resemblance with the with film, but still having an aesthetic rendering here. Just to prove the point, wait a second, I need both hands. So on the left side here, we have a look which is based literally on film measurements. So this Vision look we have in Baselight now. It's not limiting the dynamic range. It's basically like a scene referred edit that goes from log to log and does not reduce any dynamic range. And on the other side, we have the ChromoGen plugin, which is an homage to that. If we look closely, you will see that it's not an exact perfect match. And then comes a philosophical question: how do we know that our print film emulations are a perfect match of the film process itself? Because at the time when we made those matches, we couldn't do good comparisons really. So I'm doubting that what we think we have as a print film emulation is actually a very accurate representation. A different discussion. So, but if we look through here, the blues, when they touch, you can see the differences better. And you can see like it's some colors might be slightly different, but we would, I hope, all agree that it brings the image into the same world, but now with the possibilities to explore every individual step that was needed to do this, plus modifying, be able to modify them. So if you don't like how the greens are swinged to melon green in the shadows, then you can change that. This is the bipack look. This is a very extreme two-strip process. Typically, this is used like just like with a portion. You can blend those looks, and then you can just like add a little bit to that. But this was the way how you can make new looks is by just blending and mixing existing ones. But here with the ChromoGen one, you can really go in there and take everything out and see how that is basically produced. Yeah. More importantly is how does it feel when you work with that tool, and how does it feel grading through the tool? And this is where we've done a long a case study over years, because we want to be really sure that it produces also novel looks. And I want to take the opportunity. How much time do I have? Yeah. I cannot explain each and every individual tool, but I would like to pick one or two tools and from that framework and explain how they work and why they are different to other tools, and why that sticking to that leitmotif might produce a good result. So So this is basically the naked starting point. We see that cylindrical presentation here. And the first thing I want to introduce is color saturation. That's one of the most important aspects of a look, is how it treats the saturation aspect. It means like how do we, can we make the, how do we make the colors more colorful? And when I move the slider here, both sliders are linked from left to right, you can see it makes it more colorful. Very simple, and it does what I hope you got an intuition. It just scales up that whole thing, so it just makes everything a little bit brighter. And in fact, this is in this very special space. It's a very natural and very simple function. Just for fun, I did what I did is I added what you would need to do if you do this in RGB. So here's an RGB cube, and we see the RGB cube. When I change now the saturation, you see what you would need to do in RGB to get the same effect. And if I crank this up here, I hope you can see that this simple operation of adding saturation in RGB would be a tremendously complex process, right? So this is, and if we desaturate it, you can see that we get all, we are getting immediately closer to that kind of. If we round off the corners, you could see that we are almost at the potato shape here. But we are not working in that space. We are working here in this one. That's why it's better to look at this. So we can also asymmetrically gain the blue yellow saturation, because this is typically what we want to do. There are also evolutionary motivation behind why we need to boost the blue yellow light side more than the magenta, red, green one. So you can do this asymmetrically, and then what you also can do is for every of those operators, you can modulate them. You can say that effect I'm having here, that saturation effect, please apply this only to more the shadows. And now we can boost in a very natural way the colorfulness of the shadows or the highlights, right? So typically what we want is if we increase the saturation, then we rather like to do this in the shadows and not overall. This is one way of modulating, and let me bring up another thing. And what you also see is because that we are working in a human perception-oriented space, so it does not have any concept of display, because that's an artificial concept here. So, but what we can see is that when we crank up the saturation, it will move colors outside of what the display can show, and at some point then it will clip the colors. So, but what we can do is we can say with the last modulation, please focus that change only more to the pastel tones. And now what would happen is we are changing the saturation in the core, in the not so saturated colors. And if I move this the other way around, then we would say we are boosting or reducing more the saturated colors. Now, a colorist would say, I can do this all with keys and with shapes and with curves and stuff like that. Yes, but you only have 3 sliders for this modulation because they follow a very specific limited amount of functions, and these are also typically enough to, or they are enough to produce those interesting looks, because we limit ourselves to the leitmotif of a natural system. Maybe another one which is related, which one do we pick? Let's pick color crosstalk. Color crosstalk is that domain crosstalk I have discussed earlier. That is basically gives me the opportunity to take the red channel and the green channel, let's say, and cross spill it into the yellow-blue channel. And this is also motivated by the human perceptual system, because you imagine you have millions of wires connecting your retinal output to your visual cortex. Those wires, if you have like a very strong signal on one wire, it will spill electrically onto the other wires. And then also when neurons hit, they have like negative flipped, it's called lateral inhibition, connection points. So not every wire is basically really disconnected from the others. There are little kind of bridges where they can flow from one to the other. And this is what we are introducing here as well. And you can see that this is actually the key to produce also a filmic rendering is producing those kind of crosstalk. So another example of domain crosstalk. So let's pick a look and just slap it on a few images. I think this is from the Sony test. Am I allowed to show this actually, Sebastian? I'm not sure. This was, yeah, just maybe. Go. Okay, but this is also from you guys. Anyway, so maybe this one here. So maybe you can see here that we got the same type of effect where we say like we add this onto that process onto an image, and it is overall and very importantly for different types of skin tones, dark, bright, female, male, and it is beneficial. So we can produce looks which work in the same way than a film worked by having that type of beneficial color rendering for skin tones. But not only that, if we look now, so this is how I typically work. If I evaluate those, I have like first some skin tones and then shots with red, shots with orange, shots with yellow, and then I basically go through the whole palette and see that what it's doing is beneficial for all of the content. So I cannot possibly go through all of the tools, but rest assured that the colorist of your choice, if he's working on a baseline, will have soon first of all the presets we are shipping with, all of those starting points that start somewhere in a familiar place, but this is not the end point, but the starting point of a look discussion, and and that. We give the colorist and also through the colorist, the cinematographer, 10 new tools specifically dedicated for look development. Okay, I think I got the hour and open for questions. And if we get some of the lights back, that would be also good. Yeah. I guess I have a typo, but yeah.
No, I didn't find any typo, and thank you very much for these presentations. To begin with, I really liked what I saw. I enjoyed it, and it's very good coloring, and thank you, and bravo. Now, while you have been talking, I have been thinking. You're talking about crosstalk. It's true that in our eye there is lots of crosstalk for various reasons, because our cones are full spectrum with a peak, and also because the three colors are transformed to the brain, transmitted to the brain via only two cables, so they have to mix together, and things are quite difficult and weird for specialists. But something like that happens in cameras as well. There is in-camera crosstalk. Okay, so sometimes you may have to work with all this system. I forgot its name, sorry. And if you have to match multiple cameras, different versions, which is, to be honest, for us who don't make extremely expensive movies, somehow often. I mean, we need a second camera. They just won't bring us a second Venice. They will bring us something much lesser. How can you deal with that? I mean,
for that question, I could only show you something that works in our system. So because part of your question was how can you do this if you not have such a system? That part of the question I can obviously not answer. But we are also developing. I mean, the question is if you take two different cameras and you are filming the same set, and if you do the input device transform, which is established by the camera manufacturer, so it's published typically in the Academy ACES framework, but then others are using this as well. So if you bring them together, then you will see that for some colors they match quite good, for other colors they do not match. And this is a complicated function which is tied to what Dirk said, which is metamerism. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Yeah, and because cameras also work with the same metameric principle that you throw a spectrum at them and then they will record 3 channels in RGB. And the thing is that different cameras have different spectral sensitivity functions, which are not a trilinear combination between each other. I don't want to be too technical, but you cannot match 2 cameras for all of the light sources you are using and all of the objects in front of the camera with a general transform. A general transform like an IDT is just, it's basically so that the error you get is minimized around the colors which are important to you. But you never can match 2 colors perfectly. Because then if you match 2 colors perfectly, then 2 other colors might not. Yep, that's the fundamental problem. We have tools in FilmLight to further improve that process by picking a color and allowing the colorist, I mean, I can quickly show this. If we go here, because this has a lot of image. So if it's also a new tool. So here on the right, we see the measurement of the image. That is the image, and that is the new tool. And this allows you, or the colorist, to apply force to the actual image. So you can basically say, if that green is not where it should be, then you can just move it somewhere. And this allows you to really match cameras quite perfectly. And you can see it's not like a 3D LUT creator thing, because it is a force field. It's basically applying kind of a weather model or a wind model onto the color space. And with this type of technology, you can fix every shot, match the colors of every shot very, very effectively, because what you can also do is you can basically, if I reset this, can go onto the skin tone on the image, and it will select the spot in the color space for you. And you can see it's the same kind of perceptual concept where you have like the color spread around in this color plane. And you can click here, and then you can just basically move that color directly. And or if you say like we want that blue to be a little bit less saturated or match the other color, then you can do this. And it will produce a homogeneous, globally solved transform, which does not increase a lot of noise. Now, if you say, like, what if one color is darker than the other, then I need 2 hands. Wait a second. So I pick on the yellow, and I press Control, I guess. And now what's happening, I can introduce a mountain. So we're using a contour line representation. So I went into the yellows, and I moved all the yellows up. And then I can go, let's say, here, and make the reds darker, and again here you see how those joined together in a one globally solved system. And with this type of, and this is not a look tool, it's a grading tool, because it's a very precise edit, and a look is very broad, because a look needs to work for 10,000s of shots, and if the exposure is a little bit left or right in terms of white balance, it should still do the same thing, whereas a grade is a specific thing for that one shot or that one scene. And with this type of control, you can easily match 2 cameras for that specific shot and that specific color, or more easily, let's say. But of course, having similar cameras is always beneficial, of course. Yeah, sorry, this was a long answer to a good question. Another question? Yeah, over there on the side, yeah, maybe. No, we just do it.
Thank you. Very interesting presentation, and all in all, the concept of natural versus artificial systems, I fully agree with it. I just wanted to add a little bit to when you showed the equiluminescence situation where the luma and the chroma are are similar, so that they start intensifying one color, and it becomes too intense. This is actually a natural phenomenon, so we see it because we have parmo and magnocellular pathways in our brain, and one of those is black and white. So these pathways create similar effects, sometimes when we look at sunset. And artists throughout the history of painting have used this effect, like Monet's Impression Sunrise, for example, is using this effect to boost the sun. So I think the results that you are showing are really beautiful and convincing, but it's not that much that it's unnatural to have equiluminescence.
Completely right. Absolutely, 100% agree. It is just the argument was that it looks unnatural if something which is clearly an object, a reflected object, suddenly looks like as if it would emit color. Of course, if you have a light saber or you have a light source, you will have these colors, and we perceive them. I completely agree. And there's actually it's a very threshold-based perception. I think Evans named it G0. That's basically the grayness of objects, and completely agree. That my point was that we accidentally produce those colors on objects where it doesn't look, because it's basically a rivalry of information, because one information says this is a surface color, but then the brightness or I should say the luminance for that I don't want to go into luminance and lightness and all of that, because it's yet another discussion, very big one. But the color looks too bright for that object mode. So in perception, we have three types of object modes. It's like surface colors, fluorescent colors, and light emitting colors, roughly speaking. And if the object mode, what in terms of the color, says something else than what the spatial configuration tells us, then this looks unnatural. I hope you agree on that. Okay. Yeah. Good point. I humbled over this a little bit, but I gave a 1.5 hours talk only about this subject in 2018 at Camera Image. So if you... Other questions? Another one here?
Now, I'd like just you to comment something, because I've always thought that, I've always believed that the main difference between film and digital, electronic sensors, is the main difference, not the sole difference, but the main difference is that on film, the more you overexpose, the less saturation you get, while on an electronic system, the more you expose, you overexpose, you get more saturation. And I always thought that this was the main reason that the original Alexa was so much better than the other cameras at the time. Because the people in ARRI brought this out of the camera science. More or less. Okay, not 100%. It's not mathematics now I'm talking. Okay. So I'd like you to comment on this, because you did not speak about this part of the idea. I mean, how film versus digital reacts towards this.
A very good observation, and you can see this what you're saying in this plot, where at some point the film desaturates and the digital display still produces that. And the same is true for the cameras. The built-in desaturation for the film comes from two parts, but the main part comes also from the print film, because the way the print film is making the color on the screen is by taking a lamp, a xenon lamp or older lamps, and then this is the white continuous spectrum we have, and then what film does is it subtracts out. If I want to produce a saturated color, I need to filter, for example, a saturated red. I need to filter out the ultraviolet, the blue, the green, and the yellow light out of the light source of the projector to produce my red. And that means the more red I produce, the more light the film absorbs, and the less light it let it shine through the film onto the screen. That means there is this natural correlation. The more saturated you do you produce a color, the darker it gets. You cannot make a bright saturated red in a film projection because the way it works. Now coming back to the camera. Yes, digital cameras do not have this behavior at all. They have a very tiny soft clip I mean, even a digital camera does not have the hard clip we always add to it, but the soft clip that's happening, it's really just in the last code values. And up there's anyway this kind of wonky situation where you might want to stay away from the last half stop before the clipping. And in fact, I know that Ari did some special treatment for this upper stop into the clipping, so that when clipping occurred, which it did, it was not perceived as ugly. Yeah, so there's tweaks the camera manufacturers can do to make the camera behave more in its extreme situations. But a digital camera, if it's not clipping, it is fully exposure invariant. That means you can stop up and down. The colors will not change. But the only thing which changes is the noise. So that's yeah. I hope this. I think I got 2 fingers from the left side, which I think means 2 minutes, which I think are over now. All right. Anyway, I'm here today until tomorrow, so feel free to drop by and have some discussions about film, which I always like to do. Thank you so much.